Good evening, everyone. My name is Sam Nasser, and this is the Cleveland C# VB.NET user group. A little bit about the group. We meet every month. The meetings are free of charge and open to the public, and we cover a variety of topics related to .NET. You can find meeting information posted at meetup.com at the link listed at the bottom of the slide. We always like to give a big thank you to our sponsors, PostSharp and DevExpress, for offering free licenses that will be given away using the eval forms. We'd like to thank the .NET Foundation for sponsoring the Meetup site. And last but not least, NIS Technologies for sponsoring the go-to meeting space. Also, we have a special offer from Manning.com, 35% off a selection of books. The link will be made available in chat later, and you can use the discount code MTPCLEC21. Some additional information, please keep in mind participation is encouraged. And like I always say, the only stupid question is the one not being asked. So feel free to jump in at any point in time with a question or a comment. However, when not speaking or commenting, kindly ask you to mute your microphone just to avoid any background noise. And we want to keep it as casual as possible, but at the same time organized enough to give our speaker a chance to go through the slides and the demos. And last but not least, the presentation is being recorded and will be posted on YouTube. And for tonight's feature presentation, we have overview of Power Apps by April Dunnam from Microsoft. April is a Power Platform developer advocate. She's also the self-proclaimed process automation princess, SharePoint Siren, and Karaoke Queen. She teaches others to build applications with zero code, and you can find her blog at sharepointsiren.com. And there at the bottom, you have the links to her YouTube, as well as Twitter and GitHub. And so with that, let me turn it over to April. April, welcome. Glad to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here. Okay, so as Sam said, to kick me off there, my name's April Dunnam, and I work at Microsoft as a Power Platform developer advocate. So don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm going to save time for questions at the end, of course. So please make sure to bring your questions in. But if we can't get to it today or you have something specific, I'm available on social media. You can find me on LinkedIn. I also have a YouTube channel with videos too. So I'm going to be giving an overview of Power Apps. Now, before I dive into the specifics of Power Apps, just want to talk about the low code in general when it comes to Microsoft and what we offer and where Power Apps fits into that. So when we look at the developer journey with as far as Microsoft products go, the Power Platform has really kind of evolved to be a core piece of that journey. So back in '97, we kind of started to see the first suite of visual developer tools emerge there. .NET being open sourced in 2002, and then 2015, 2016 is when we really start to see the introduction of low code and automation tools in the Microsoft stack. Now, fast forwarding to today, the Power Platform is a key part of the way that we develop solutions, both as professional developers and low code developers alike. And why is this important? So why should, us as C# developers or, VB.NET developers, whatever we are, be concerned about low code or even be interested in learning about low code and things like Power Apps? Well, it's just the way that the world is changing, where you have so much demand for applications that need to be created, and we just don't have enough people to create them because it's overwhelming. And so that's why they're seeing the trend that by next year alone, 65% of app development is going to be in the low code space. So it's something that sooner than later we should start trying to add to our skill set because it will really help us meet this application demand that we have and help with modernization of our applications. All right, so enough with all of the kind of marketing stuff. Let's get into Power Apps itself and where it fits in. So Power Apps is part of the Power Platform, as I mentioned. So one of the things when it comes to Power Apps that makes it so powerful is the fact that it is part of an overall platform. It's an integrated system of products that help us build solutions. So Power Apps is the application development side of things. So it gives us a way with low code to be able to quickly build applications that work on your desktop and your mobile and your tablet devices. But the thing, again, that makes it powerful is that along with it, we have easy plug and play access to Power Automate if we want to do process automation and even robotic process automation to automate things on our desktop. We get access to Power BI to integrate within our applications to do dashboards, reporting, and analytics. We get access to Power Virtual Agents if we want to integrate a chatbot as part of our solution, and even Power Pages if we need external websites. So all of these tools as well, kind of sharing some things in common. One of the most powerful is data connectors. So that's one of the things that makes it so easy to build solutions fast inside of the Power Platform is we have over 1,000 different connectors out of the box to different software services. So whether you want to connect to other Microsoft services like SharePoint, OneDrive, and SQL and all that, or maybe non-Microsoft services, we have connectors for most of the use cases you can think of, and the ability to extend that, which I'll touch on here in a little bit. We also have access to a kind of a low-code formula language to help make our applications more intelligent called PowerFX, and a really robust data platform called Microsoft Dataverse to have our data model and store our data, as well as low-code AI tools with AI Builder. So lots that we can take advantage of in this holistic platform, and Power Apps is one of those core components if we want to develop applications. Now, the thing that makes it really compelling, in my opinion, to a developer, because my background didn't really give that earlier on, is I was a .NET and a SharePoint developer in the day that got into the Power Platform and low code. I was doing consulting and I saw how it could help my customers and how I could kind of put out some more solutions faster by kind of using some of the automation capabilities of Power Automate and Power Apps to build some of the applications that we're looking at. So with that, you typically think with low-code solutions, there is a limit to what you can do, right? So for the easy button, you're kind of sacrificing the amount that you can do with it. You're kind of locked into a rigid set of features and functionality. But that's one of the things that sets the Power Platform apart, is we have all these extensibility options. So within the Power Platform, we can extend the solutions that we build into our own custom API. So I mentioned we had over 1,000 connectors in the Power Platform, so we can connect to services, but we can build custom connectors. So if we have an internal API that we want to connect with, a connector is just a wrapper around an API. So if that's a RESTful service, if we have an opening API definition of that, we can integrate that even with Azure services like API management or by creating a native connector. We can even do functions by integrating with function apps, logic apps as well. And we have rich developer tooling. So we can actually build connectors natively through Visual Studio or VS Code, not even having to leave the tool of your choice to start integrating with the Power Platform. So really a lot has happened in the last few years to make the developer experience for the Power Platform even easier and better and more integrated. As well as SQL, Cosmos, Azure, OpenAI, all kinds of integrations available to us to start extending it. And we can't not talk about AI these days. Of course, there's Copilot integration with all of these Power Platform products now, including Power Apps, which I'll segue to a demo here shortly, and we can actually take a look at some of that capability. But really just the main point that I want to get across, that what Power Apps is going to help us with and the Power Platform in general, is moving from all of these disconnected solutions. So you might have one robotic process automation tool here. Maybe you have your collaboration suite over here. Maybe you're using a tool for process mining, for low-code websites. Maybe you have a different identity provider, cloud data platform, and all that. By using tools like Power Apps, it's helping us take those disconnected solutions and have kind of one orchestrated platform that you can use. So with the Power Platform, there's seamless integration into collaboration tools like SharePoint and Microsoft Teams, and even other services. It has robotic process automation. It has process mining as well, all baked into it. So all these things that we can do seamlessly in kind of one holistic platform. And there's several different benefits that I did want to touch on here of Power Apps and the Power Platform. We talked briefly about the extensibility and even a little bit about how the data connectivity and having 1,000 plus connectors available to us. But anytime we're thinking about adopting a new platform, we want to know it's secure and it's governable. So there's all kinds of different security controls that we can touch on later if that interests everyone, that we have available to us. It does support application lifecycle management. That's always a big question. Can we really build scalable applications that can follow good methodologies with this, and you can. And it's collaborative. So that's something, if you haven't, a lot of people that I talk to have maybe looked at Power Apps, say 5, 7 years ago, back when it was first released. And of course, like any tool, it evolves, and you haven't, they might have not looked at it again. It has changed a lot. Hopefully by the end of this session, you'll know if you haven't looked at Power Apps recently in the last several years, to take a look at it again, because there's so many more features and functionality that make it even more compelling to look into it. But the other main benefits being it's fast and it's AI assisted. In the last 3 to 6 months alone, the amount of AI innovations that have been added into the Power Platform are really mind-boggling, just making it that easier to be able to build solutions with the Power Platform. Now I'll talk a little bit about more about extensibility, just a couple points that I wanted to hit on with this. And one being, again, you don't have to leave the tools of your choice to start integrating, or even like the language of your choice to start integrating with Power Apps. So there's different things that we can do to even go past the limits of what's possible out of the box with Power Apps as far as controls. We can actually use TypeScript to create custom controls. And we can do this natively in Visual Studio, in Visual Studio Code. And we can use common frameworks like React, and it has command line tooling. So all of this is available to us. I mentioned that Power Apps can be used for web and mobile front ends. So that's another cool thing. We don't have to build multiple interfaces. We don't have to test on multiple different devices. We build it one time. It runs in the Power Apps client shell, and that's going to work on iOS, Android devices, and of course your desktop devices as well via the web. So some common use cases that I like to point out that are really good for Power Apps, there's lots of LOB extension applications, web and mobile front ends, tracking frontline worker applications is good, and lots of different patterns as far as, business process management and automation, customer information, customer care, so many different categories of things that we can leverage Power Apps for. I mentioned briefly in that overview of the Power Platform itself something called Power Effects, which is the low-code formula language for the Power Platform, and Power Apps uses this heavily. So the thing that makes it so easy for non-traditional developers to use Power Apps is this Power Effects language. Although you do need to know a quote-unquote coding language like this, it's based off of Microsoft Excel. So if you know Excel formulas, which a lot of business users and people do, then you can get started, kind of building formulas and extending your Power Apps to do complex logic and all of that pretty easily. So since it's based on that Excel formula language there, so everything is expressed in text, and it's a really user-friendly language to get started with and reduces those barriers to entry. But with Power Apps, we have all of these out-of-the-box components. Another thing that makes it really easy to start building. We drag and drop some preset controls on the screen to build a simple form application or even complex applications, because we have all kinds of complex controls, which we'll look at here in a minute. So we have all these out-of-the-box controls, but we can also extend those with custom controls, like I mentioned. And we can even host logic in Azure and call that through our Power Apps as well. All right, so I'm going to skip past a few things. So this is the custom components that I was talking about here. So we can use create responsible and reusable components to use inside of our Power Apps application using TypeScript, JavaScript, CSS, and HTML. All right, so with that, I have a ton more slides, but I don't want to bore you with that. Let's just dive in and just take a look at what Power Apps has even looked like. I don't know if in this platform, if we're able to do a show of hands or not, but I am kind of curious while I'm getting this kind of pulled up, how many people have looked at Power Apps before. Hopefully this is a pretty good introduction. Hopefully most of you have not really did much with it. But one of the things that I wanted to highlight is this experience to get it. So first of all, if you haven't looked at Power Apps and you want to just be able to try out all the functionalities that it has, there is a developer environment that you could sign up for. So if you go to aka.ms/Power Apps Dev Plan, oops, there we go. That'll take you to this site here where you can get a free developer environment to start trying Power Apps. So if you want to give it a try, definitely encourage you all to go check out this link, and I can put that in the chat as well so that you have that available to you. And you can add this onto an existing Microsoft 365 tenant, or you can even go and sign up for the Microsoft 365 developer program and then add on the Power Apps developer program on top of it so you got all of the functionality. So once you have that, you'll get an environment like you see here. So this is actually a developer environment that I've set up for myself, which has all of the capability with Power Apps, because like any product, there's different licensing requirements and all that. So this gives me kind of the full licensing where I can test out all of the standard and the premium functionality that I want to. Now, an easy gateway into this is with some of the new AI features and the co-pilots that I've rolled out. So it's really as easy, it can be as easy, I should say, as going in and using on this homepage for Power Apps and typing what kind of app you want to build. So I could say something like, I want an app to track my sales leads. Press enter, and that can actually go to work and create my data model inside of Dataverse, which is that low-code data platform that I mentioned that is kind of powering the entire Power Platform. So it will take what I typed in there, use generative AI to be able to recognize that, go out and get some suggestions for the columns I would need, and it will create the table to store the data along with the application. So I just typed that in. We see that we have some fields it suggested, like an ID, a name, company, phone number, maybe a type. So I can look at that. It looks pretty good. It even gives me sample data, so I know what to expect. And I can keep interacting with the Copilot here to be able to add additional columns, remove columns, whatever I want. So I can say something like add an email column, because I don't think I saw that. And it can actually go in and do that for me. So this is, again, just if you've never used Power Apps before and you just want to get an app out there so you can kind of reverse engineer and see what it does, this is actually a really good way to get started while taking advantage of some of the generative AI capabilities that have recently been released. All right, so let's me know that the table has been updated, and there we go. There's an email column with some sample data filled in. So if I click Create App, as I mentioned, this will go and create that Dataverse backend for me, which is a relational database. Now, we don't have to store our data inside of Dataverse in the Power Platform. As I mentioned, we have all of these different connectors that we can take advantage of. So if we kind of look just why that's loading, because that might take a second to load that application here, you can see all the connectors that we have, because I think a lot of times people think we can only connect to the Microsoft services and all of that, but we have all of these different various services that we can connect to that have nothing to do with Microsoft even. We can, of course, store our data in SQL in a Power App and get access it from there. Wherever we want to, we have access to those connectors. Okay, you see how fast that was. I didn't talk that long, and it was able to create an application for me inside of Power Apps. So this is what we call the maker experience of Power Apps looks like. Taking a further step back, there are a couple different types of Power Apps that we can create. I went through that AI assisted experience. So when we do that, it creates this type of app, which is called a Canvas app. And it's traditionally called a Canvas app because usually when you create one from scratch, it gives you a blank canvas. So nothing on it, it will look like this, and you have to build out and drag and drop your controls on the screen and all that and build out the UI basically and the user experience of your application. There's a different type of app, just to explain what we have here, if I open up a new tab, called a model-driven application. So if you have a bunch of data inside of Dataverse, so maybe you have sales data in there, so you have customers and you have contacts and all of that kind of information, and you want to build an application based off of that data, you can create a model-driven app. So if we go with the Start with Data option here, we can see some of these different types of options. So we can say select an existing table. It can actually create an app based off of any of the information that we have in Dataverse. So maybe I want to create an app to manage my accounts. So I can select the accounts, click create, and that will create an app for me. So we have different ways to initiate the process. Now, model-driven apps are different because they will give you a standard structure of how your application will look. But Canvas apps, you have complete control over the UI. So those are the two main differences in the types of apps we can create. But what it gives you here when we do the AI assisted experience is really a fully functioning application. So if I were to play this as someone kind of interacting with the app, I can see my sales leads on the left-hand side. This is all the data. So basically the sample data that it curated for us. I can click on these items on the right-hand side. There's all of our data for that. We can add new items as well. And all of that's baked in and kind of ready to go. So this is just a simple example of what we can do. And to give you an idea of the kind of rich functionality that we have inside of Power Apps for testing, you'll notice here in the upper right-hand corner, this is relatively new, an advancement here where we have the ability to test the responsiveness because we can build responsive applications. So this, what AI built for us here is a responsive design. So we can change the device type to say like an iPad Air, and we can see what it would look like. It'll emulate that device type for us. And we can see what that will look across different types of devices and whether portrait or landscape mode in the web or whatever we want. So has that native built-in testing for us to be able to see what it will look like on our different devices, which is pretty cool. So taking it a little step further back, just so you can see, what's going on behind the scenes. So if you want to build an app from scratch, basically on the left-hand side here, if we go to insert, these are all of our out-of-the-box controls. So we have everything from labels, rectangles, and all that. So we can do icons. So there's a bunch of built-in icons. We can add custom icons as well. But we have more rich media controls as well. So it's not just for simple input forms. I think that's a common misconception that I'd like to squash there is we can only do very simple like input form type situations. But if you look over at the controls we have all kinds of things except rich text. We have a timer control. So if you want to add any animation into your application, you can do that leveraging a timer control. And if we look at our, let's go to media. We can build applications that have barcode readers. So it can leverage the native barcode scanning functionality of your mobile device and leverage that and get the barcode back so you can create inventory processing applications on here. We can embed audio, record audio directly. It has a microphone control, PDF. It has a native map control if we want to do an application that can get directions for somewhere and it can pull that data in dynamically using Azure Maps. We have video controls, as I mentioned. It even has a measuring camera. So if we want to take measurements for like a field application, we can actually measure things in mixed reality within Power Apps. So without having to build anything. So we're not having to code anything. We're just dragging these controls onto the screen and it handles all of that complex logic for us, which is really cool. 3D objects as well. So that's another mixed reality control. So we can view things in 3D. And all of these, there's the icons I mentioned. And then also AI Builder. So we can easily, there's a bunch of pre-existing models inside of AI Builder that we can leverage natively in Power Apps. So if we want to build an expense reporting application, we can actually simply drag the receipt processor control onto our app. And what this does is it basically allows us to scan a receipt. So that'll open up a tab to browse something on my file system. I can upload a receipt and it will use AI and object detection to extract all the key pieces of information from that receipt in this pre-trained model. And I could fill out a form with that and just automatically submit that into whatever system that we have. So there's all these advanced controls that I make sure to point out every time that I demo this so that people know that they're there. So that's how you can see how we could easily kind of build out a working application with this by dragging and dropping these controls on the screen. And each control has its own different set of properties. So if I were to put in a text input, say versus a button, for example. So the text input, if we look on the right-hand side, we have like the default value that we can specify. We have some hint text, so we can say, put your name here, whatever that is. Customize the font size, all the standard things that you want to customize here, the weight, the alignment, and all of that. The size, we can even do border radius if you want like rounded corners on the input and stuff like that. All configurable via simple properties that we have to access there. Same thing with the button. Now I mentioned too, so this is, as far as building the UI, it's as straightforward as it gets, dragging and dropping and organizing your controls there. For the logic side of thing, that's where PowerFX comes in. So some of these objects that we have different properties. Like the button, for example, has one called onSelect. So if you go to this onSelect property, we have this FX window. Again, looks very Excel-like when you go into the formula bar in Excel. This is where you could put in your PowerFX logic. So we could do things like if I wanted to submit this data to a database that we have, I could say something like patch. And it has IntelliSense built in, so we can see that. As soon as I type that function inside, it's going to suggest a data source that I have. So I have this bound to my sales leads table already. That's the only data source I have in here. I can select that and keep using IntelliSense to kind of fill out this information. So I can say defaults dot sales leads. We'll just say defaults, and then I can just like map my properties. So again, this is kind of how PowerFX works. In a nutshell, very similar to Excel formulas. So you would just go into the property and type in some of your logic there. As far as getting data into our apps, there's no real limit on the amount of data sources that we can integrate. So to do that, if we click on the Data tab, we can see here is that sales leads table that we have in Dataverse. But if I wanted to pull data from other places, like say maybe I have a SharePoint list, I can search for SharePoint and it will filter the list of those 1,000+ connectors that we have, select that, and it will pull up a list of my most recent sites that we have here. So I can look at all the sites that I have. Let's see, we'll try the HR site, and I might pull in, like recruitment tracker or some kind of list that we have, click connect, and now that's available to me inside of the application to do anything I want with. I can pull data from it. So if we want to pull data from it and see what's in the list, if we go to insert and we go to layout, we can do a vertical gallery. So this is just giving us a way to see a list of information. I can bind that to my recruitment tracker list. And now we have the list of data from that database. So that's kind of how easy that is to do as well. So we can mix and match as many of these different data sources as we want. Now, one of the cool things about Dataverse is if I need to make any changes to the underlying table in the app, I can do that right here from this maker experience. So you see I can click on these three dots and I can go to edit data, and that'll pop open a panel kind of similar, honestly, to what you might see in a modern SharePoint list if anyone here has worked with SharePoint in the past. And I can add new columns to my table. I can edit the data that's in the table. So there's all kinds of different data types that are supported inside of Dataverse, lookups, choices, all of that. That we can support here, even files, so we can upload images and documents and all of that, and build out whatever I need to do in my table without having to go away from my maker experience, which is really nice, kind of seamless, integrated experience. SharePoint, not the same. If I were to go edit data, it would pop open a new tab and take me to that SharePoint list. So that's kind of how that experience works. But again, it's just a matter of mixing and matching these different data sources that you want to consume, dragging and dropping your controls, and getting a functioning app. Some things that you might notice when I added this gallery on the screen, we have this little light bulb icon. This is just another good example. This is just another good example, sorry about that, of AI helping us to make these applications. So if I click on that light bulb icon, I'll see a panel pop open, and this is called Power Apps Ideas. So we can kind of give it a text prompt of what we might want to do with this particular gallery, and it even gives us some ideas of what we might want to do. So maybe I want to limit this where an ID equals what, or maybe I just want to sort that. So I can say sort recruitment tracker by created, something like that, and press enter. And then it can suggest some things, and I just click apply, and then it will apply this pretty complex formula into my items property there. So now it added in this filter for me and it created this Power Effects code. So that's kind of all built in to help us build applications and Power Apps. All right, so that was, I wanted to give you at least like a peek into it before I went into some more slides here. Now I mentioned like developer support. We touched a little bit on data connectors. So I mean, I feel pretty good that we covered quite a bit in there. As I mentioned, Dataverse, we showed a little bit about that. But just to give you an idea of what you can do with that data platform, it has built-in security models, so it handles everything from row level security if you want to do that. We can do things like calculated and roll-up fields. We have things called plugins where we can actually extend the data model there. We have built-in reporting. It supports mobile offline as well natively. So lots of benefits to using Dataverse as your kind of data platform that you store your data in for the Power Platform. Now I'm going to just skip past some of this stuff. Now, one thing I wanted to show you Dataverse related. So if you have data, say in SQL Server, for example, and you want to be able to consume that in a Power App or maybe a Power BI dashboard or a Power Page or something like that, but you don't want to move it over to Dataverse. You just want to be able to pull that in and manipulate it in Dataverse. We have something called virtual tables. So it allows you to get some of the benefits that Dataverse offers while keeping your data inside of SQL in that case and having a two-way sync. So there's all kinds of different integration scenarios that are offered there. Now, the thing I wanted to get to here is the security and governance, because again, I think that's really important. Kind of a big concern to squash about, moving to something like this is how can I really secure it down? When people hear that there's 1,000+ connectors, the first thing that comes to mind is how do I make sure people aren't using those connectors and accidentally leaking like PII information and things like that. So that's why we have things like, for starting, DLP policies, data loss prevention policies. So with all those connectors, we can classify them into different groups, and we can even allow or specifically block connectors or certain actions in a connector. So if you don't want someone building a Power App that goes and pulls information from your SQL database with sensitive information and goes and posts to LinkedIn about that information, you can block certain actions so people can't do a post to LinkedIn in the connection or something like that, or they can't mix and match the two connectors. So this is all available in our admin. So if you go to admin.powerplatform.com, we have an admin center, and you can configure all these data loss prevention policies to make sure that your data is safe and you're controlling what connectors and services people that are building solutions can connect to. We also have audit logs available so that you can track what's going on in your environment. Even things like endpoint filtering. So that's filtering. That's how granular we can get. If you are using the SQL Server, you can explicitly filter connections to certain endpoints as well. So it's not an all or nothing type thing. So all of these things are baked in to make sure that you're building secure solutions. And we have really good application performance and insights for Power Apps as well. We have a monitor built into Power Apps for debugging, and we can even use Azure Application Insights on our Power Apps application. So if we were to go back to this application we were looking at earlier, and maybe we're having an issue with it, we can see here on the advanced tools, if we can open a monitor, and that will actually basically open up a live debugging session for us. So I could go and run through kind of testing this out. So maybe adding a new item. So I'll put some information there. I won't fill out the name. All right, so that kind of produced an error. Now I can go back to my monitor and I can see all of the steps logged in here. And then there is my result info. So I can tell exactly what happens, and we can invite people to debugging sessions. So we can do real-time live debugging. I can invite someone else. I can watch their session in real time as they run through the steps to see what the problems are. So this is just really kind of enterprise-grade solutions for being able to test and deploy our applications here. And of course, we can download these if we couldn't quite figure out what the issue was, have someone else look at the results, and lots of capabilities with this monitoring function that we have. All right. So let's keep kind of moving along here because I want to get to this other piece. So ALM. So that's one of the things that comes up quite a bit. And that's why we release Power Pipelines. So with this, it gives developers a way to basically run pipelines using your preferred tools to be able to deploy and do automated deployments inside of the Power Platform. So it's actually built with the Power Platform to enable you to do these and set up these automated deployments for your solutions. So lots of cool things coming for that. This is in preview right now, but it should be released relatively soon, I think. I don't think there's a specific timeline, but definitely check that out if you're using Power Apps and you want to learn more about how to do some automated deployments. All right, and then for that, let's see, I'm sorry, I put a lot of slides not knowing what you all would be interested in to go through. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is co-authoring. So again, if you haven't looked at Power Apps in a while, and maybe it's been 5 years since you looked at it, one of the things that you might have noticed is if I'm in here editing this application, traditionally, no one else could be in the app. It's like you're locking a file on a file server, like, no two people can't be in the same Excel file type thing. But that's changed with the new co-authoring capabilities that we have. So now more than one person can be in an application, and we even have commenting. So if we have multiple developers that are working on an application, we can go in here and we can add comments like, maybe this text box doesn't look good or something like that. We can add a comment in there. You have to save the app initially first. So I'll show you that. There we go. So we can say new comment, and I can mention people. I can say like change the font to Miranda or something like that. And keep that kind of log. There we go. So there's a comment on that particular control. So kind of like how we're collaborating on a Word document or a PowerPoint in that way, except this is for application development inside of our Power Apps, which is really cool. So more than one person can be in at the same time, and we can even have comments and kind of work collaboratively on these applications together. All right, and we even have things, so for more kind of advanced testing, so if you want to do like unit testing in test, we have a Test Engine and Test Studio as well that are coming out. Okay. Oh, and one of the other cool things, so recently I was at an event and we ran an ALM workshop for the Power Platform, and to kind of speed up the process and reduce people having to do a lot of setup, we have them use GitHub code spaces for some of the stuff. So there's built-in integration with Power Platform tools with GitHub code spaces to be able to use that and support for Windows and Linux. All right, and as far as building applications fast with Power Apps, we looked at this a little bit earlier, right? So it's browser-based. So because it's browser-based, that means we can develop Power Apps, whether it's on our PC or a Mac device. And you saw just how easy it was. I mean, we drag and drop our controls, we do configure the properties, we add in our data, and we put in some formulas, and that's basically it. So it's really fast to get started. And there's even some more advanced stuff that we can do. So one of the things that's rolling out in preview is something called named formulas. So you might have used these inside of Microsoft Excel. So just lots of things going on behind the scenes to make our applications faster and more performant. So this is one of the things that really speeds up loading times, is supporting things like named formulas inside of Power Apps. I mentioned reusable components. So a lot of times when you're building apps, you kind of have to do a lot of the manual configuration. So if I really wanted to change how a control looks out of the box, like if we go back to the one screen that we were looking at, and I did a lot of manipulation to this text box to get it exactly how I want it. And I know that I want every text box that I use to have that look and feel, right? So maybe I'll change the shading or something just to make it kind of stand out. I could turn this into a reusable component if this was a standard text box that I wanted to use, rather than having to go and make these changes in every app that I build. So I can copy that. And if we look over here, we have screens and we have components. So I can say new component, and I can actually just paste in that text box that I custom styled. So now, anytime someone wants to build an application, we can have them use this custom control that we built. So we can actually export this. and import that into another application, and they could use this control. So we have all these ways to kind of create, reusable components inside of our application, so we're not having to reinvent the wheel in every single app that we create, which makes it really easy. We have different grid controls as well. So one of the things that we didn't quite look at was on the model-driven app side and some of the kind of experiences that we have there. So let's actually jump over to a model-driven app that I've already built. And we'll go over here. And I think I want, let's go to this one. So with model-driven apps, as I said, it starts with your data and it builds an application for you based off of that. So we don't have as much control over the UI, but we get a kind of ready-to-use application out of the box. So on the left-hand side is where we could browse between our different data sources, basically, or our tables. And then on the right-hand side is where we have all these actions to work with the data. So common things that you want, obviously, to add a new item. So I can say we have a new booking. Just put in test customer and we'll save. So there's that new item, and we have all of this built-in integration where we can kick off workflows based off of this data. We can run reports and all of that. And if we go back, now that we have data in there, all of this stuff to be able to search and filter the data is fully baked for us. So I have built-in capability to sort and filter with this data grid, edit the columns that show in the grid easily, edit filters that show out of the box to be able to do some conditional formatting, however I want that to show. I have filtering search boxes. I can have, this is the integration with Power BI that I mentioned, so we can add a visual to this view. So it can help us contextualize and visualize our information, all baked in with inside this tool. And sometimes that'll take a minute to load there because it's generating a new report basically for us on the one line of data that we just added into that table there. But you get the point of what we can do with that. So lots we can do from the model-driven app side. And just a little bit that I wanted to get in from the AI side of things, just to show you how fast stuff is changing in here. Let's see. Let's actually go back here and I'll just show you. I think I showed most of the things from the Power Apps side, but the main thing I was wanting to call out there is just how even outside of Power Apps, if you've used Power Automate as well, which is a workflow process tool, we have these copilots built into there. So they're just being used across the Power Platform to be able to do things like automations here. So I could say I want an automation to notify me when I receive an email from my boss or something like that. There we go. I could type, that's always helpful. And then it will go again using generative AI and it just suggested a flow. It looks like it's doing everything I want it to do, which is pretty cool. So I'll just say create. And now we have a workflow based off of that. So when an email arrives, it's going to get my manager, check to see if it's from my manager, and then send me a notification on my phone, which is pretty cool. So all these co-pilots are just available across the Power Platform that we can use. Okay, so with that, that was most of what I wanted to show. There are some resources that I wanted to make sure to show you here. I'll make this deck available because these are like clickable resources here. So I'll make sure that you have that. But some things to check out, for one, make sure that you do, if you don't already have access to Power Apps and you want to try it, sign up for that Power Apps developer plan. So that'll give you all that you need to be able to get started. We also have different trainings and things you can go through on Learn. So if you just go to Microsoft Learn and look for Power Apps, there's even some help, kind of documentation. There's actually an Ask a Virtual Agent. So that's another cool thing. If you're in an app and you kind of get stuck, you can ask specific questions like, what is, let's see, what is the set function, right? So you can use this built-in virtual agents to kind of help you, and it will point you to some of the documentation that we have from the agent, which is pretty cool. I'm trying to think if there's any other big things I missed, but I don't think so. I wanted to save a decent amount of time for, for questions there and kind of make this as what you are wanting to see and the questions you have. So I'll keep this pulled up in case there's any demos and stuff that you want me to show, but we'll open the floor up for questions if there are any.
I have a question, April. That was really great. Now, for somebody like all of us probably in this meeting, I'm assuming are developer based. You know, we have developer backgrounds. For somebody that comes in cold, say, just wants to start up a business and wants to use this because they are not IT oriented, how tough is that? Like, is that an audience that this works for?
I think so. I've seen several. I mean, like I said, I came from a consulting background, so I worked with several of those type of companies before, and I think it works extremely well if you can get the right mix of people. You don't need developers, and you don't need like a development team per se, but you do need some technologically inclined champion. Like I said, if you can find someone that is kind of an Excel guru, like that person gravitates very well in particular for building Power Apps, right? So you do kind of need those business users that have the technical acumen to kind of lead the charge. But this works extremely well for organizations that might not have big development staff because it is so user friendly, especially with the Copilot stuff that I was showing. Because the hardest thing oftentimes is maybe knowing the ins and outs of some of the formulas and how to do some more complex logic, and that's really helping or even like the design, just how to get a basic design. And with the Copilot's kind of suggesting a lot of that and getting you a good starting point, it's reducing the barriers even more. And it's pretty simple to maintain, as I was talking about, as far as like an admin perspective. So if we go to admin.powerplatform.com, even the management tools for the Power Platform are pretty simple, to get started with and easy to understand, for IT or anyone that's trying to manage it, setting up those DLP policies and things like that, just all in a pretty simple user experience. So we can go into, say, my environment here, and we can look at all these settings and configure the policies and the users that have access to it and all of that. So, I mean, I think it works really well in those circumstances. Hopefully that answered that.
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Yeah,
I have a question, April.
sure.
After you're done creating the Power App, is there an ability to go behind the scenes and capture the code so you can recreate it elsewhere later?
Yes, so there is with the Power Platform CLI, you can do what's called like a pack export. So you can basically export the app itself and to YAML, basically, so you can see the code behind there and repackage it, make any changes in Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio, and repackage it and publish it somewhere else. Another thing that we can do too, if you don't want to get that technical as far as seeing the code behind, let me go back. I think I saved this. Actually, let me publish it. So there's saving and there's publishing, so I didn't really point that out before, so let me publish this version. As far as moving, like say between different environments, if you want to look at that, I'm going to go leave this solution here. And we have the concept of solution. So you can see we can package many different types of Power Platform assets. So it could be a Power App, a Dataverse table backend, Automate, whatever. And we can package that into a solution. So this is an example of the solution we have, and we can export that. Let's see, let's go. I think those are all published. Yep, and then we can export this solution, and then now we can import that into another environment, because you can see I have all these different environments. So we might have like a dev, test, and prod. So this is where like the ALM type aspect comes in. So I can take this, which I think just consumes a Canvas app in this case, and then we'll go back one level and then click on the three dots. Then we can say export, and then we can publish that, and it creates a zip file basically that we can then import into a different environment or give to a different customer if we're like developing on our own, whatever the situation is.
Okay, thanks. Another question, you had mentioned that it runs in the browser. But do I have to always be at powerapps.com, or can I actually have an SDK that I can download onto my laptop and run everything there?
Yeah, you do always have to be on powerapps.com. So it is fully in the browser. And then same thing with I don't have like my emulator up to be able to show my phone, but when as a user running Power Apps, you have to download the Power Apps application, and the apps that you use run in the context of that app. Although we do just recently support mobile device management deployment as well. But as far as building them, yeah, it's all in the browser. There's no SDK or anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, well, great few questions there. So, and just why maybe other people are thinking of questions, just some other things that I could show quickly here. I mentioned a little bit on custom connectors because, as developers, I think that's probably one of the easiest extension points that we have for the Power Platform is being able to extend the amount of data sources that we can consume data for. So you can see I have a few different custom connectors here and how easy it is. If you have an open API definition, you can literally just import from a URL, import from a file, and browse to that. I don't have one handy, but I'll go create from blank so you can kind of see what the process looks like here. And it's just a matter of defining your host. So we could go just put that for now so you can see your base URL. We can go to security. We can define our authentication type. So we can do OAuth, API key, basic auth, or even no authentication. And then you would define the actions in here. So that's really kind of at the base of it. Again, if you have an open API file, you can even bypass all this and it would just configure it all for you. But that's all a connector is at the core. And then now once we build that, anyone that's has access to build solutions with the Power Platform in our environment, they can build automations with Power Automate on this. They can build applications that connect with your service. So it's a really good way to extend the platform with some of the APIs you have, and that's kind of how easy it is to get started building those.
I have another question. Like to start something brand new, this looks like, cumbersome at first until you get used to it, just like anything
Yeah.
else. The more you do it, the better off you are and the faster you are. But what about if you already have an existing very complex application? You can't like import that into there. It won't. Like, do you have AI that would help us get an application into this mode? Or would we have to actually start from scratch in Power Apps and sort of debug the application into it, rewrite it?
Yeah, that's a great question. As far as the AI thing, like I would love to see us like get some kind of AI tooling with everything where it could just kind of convert, and do that to a Power Platform solution. But we're not there yet. I hope maybe we'll get there in the future. So I mean, I've seen a few different ways people approach this. Yes, obviously, just starting from scratch is one way. Depending on how your complex app is set up, sometimes people will do like a hybrid scenario. So maybe like again, if you have like your data is in a REST backend there, and you want to add a different screen, so maybe starting with a connector and then adding a Power Automate piece to this new section, so you kind of have a hybrid of still having the bulk of your application like in your old system and then like a Power App component to it or add an automation onto it and then like kind of piece by piece move pieces of the solution over depending on the structure. I've seen that, but otherwise, it is kind of a start from scratch thing at the moment, unless it is something that you can kind of break apart into pieces and find different integrations with.
I guess I just kind of foresee for existing companies who already have, lots of applications or lots of complexity to their business, it would be quite a venture to get all into here. Now, like you said, you can migrate it slowly, but it's quite a commitment then, and it's time and expense wise to get something into here and then to get the hybrids talking.
It is. I mean, and there's really no way around that. Like at the moment, if you're going to cut it, it's the same way really with any platform if you're adopting a new one, right? Is like the getting
Yeah.
things over there. I've been through that, like just kind of piece by piece. I think starting with like the data piece itself, and getting that connection to your service is always a big one, and then maybe extending it with some functions or trying to use some things that can both be consumed in the Power Platform and your solution has been a good fit. Because there was one case that I had years ago where they had this big, like monolithic service, and they were creating like an Azure function, and I was able to use that same function, create a connector around it, and then add in some automation inside of Power Automate. So then when they're ready to completely cut over, we had part of that logic already over there. So I mean, that's just an example, but yeah, it's not gonna lie, it's a big undertaking if you already have a lot of big systems and things like that that you want to move over.
I see it being very powerful in the future. But there is a migration step to get to that point. But it is awesome.
Yep.
Totally awesome.
So Janice touched on an important point there. What is the selling point for a customer who has a large development staff that they would migrate over to Power Apps platform?
I mean, obviously, so there's going to be that initial learning curve and then getting stuff moved over. But once you're there, how fast you can iterate on changes is, to me, is like the big selling point, right? You're expanding a team because you can have non-traditional developers helping you be part of the development process, right? So on some of these solutions where you can focus on the more complex scenarios that need to take place. And then just if you look at the cycle of, over time, how long it takes to keep an app updated with traditional code versus with, low code and Power Platform, it's significantly reduced. It's much faster to iterate and get new features added once you are fully moved over and utilizing the platform. And then just the extensions that it offers alone, it's just hopefully you kind of saw, right? I mean, we don't have to build from scratch, all these integrations to different services or even components or things like that, because a lot of it is just baked in and the integration is already there, which speeds up development. So over time, once you moved over, it will be a faster process.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
How many people are actively using this, like for a live business? Like a production company.
Millions. So I wish I should have kept. I thought it was too salesy. I had some slide in there that said, and I forgot, but it was millions of people that are using it. It's one of the biggest. Sorry, I was seeing if I hit it or I just completely deleted it, so I could give you the exact number, but I think I completely deleted it, unfortunately. But several huge enterprise customers, like literally millions of people are using this for their enterprise.
Wow.
Anything else?
Anyone else have any questions for April? Did
I
you have
think it's
anything else?
yeah, I
Sorry,
was
go.
gonna say, but if I had parting words, it's just one of those things where I think you just need to get in, you get one of the developer environments set up, just try it out and see what you can do with it. There's a learn tab on here, so you can go through different learning paths that we have to dive into some specific topics. Even has embedded videos on there where you can learn more as well. So just definitely encourage you to try it out. And as always, if you think of anything as you try it out a little bit more, feel free to reach out. Happy to answer questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I take it the PowerPoint is available over on your GitHub?
I will put it there. I haven't put it there yet, but yes, I will upload that and it'll be under my presentations folder.
Gotcha. Okay. Very
I
good.
can see this being something that young kids would use. You know how young kids at
Yep.
home, after they're done with their homework type thing, they'll hop on and play. And I can see it getting into schools and becoming a massive popular thing. And they'd almost be business ready, outside of college if this is what businesses want, because this is
For
almost
sure.
a learn thing.
Yeah, exactly. Lots of colleges are adding this into their curriculum, with low code development and Power Platform in the curriculum, because it is growing in demand. You just think a few years ago, before this came around, there wasn't a job title if you search LinkedIn for Power Platform developer. Now there are several. So it is becoming more in demand in the job market, and we have lots of Microsoft student ambassadors that are diving into the Power Platform and having amazing careers in the industry with it.
So another question for you. What are some of the things that Power Apps cannot do that you need code for?
Um, let's see. I'm trying to think of specific scenarios. I mean, obviously, hmm, there's not. It can do a lot. It's just like more. Should you do it? I guess I would say, type thing. So, I mean, because even if it can't do it, like you can have a function call it right through the Power App. So there's not a lot that I can think of that you just can't. You flat out can't do without some kind of intervention. Now, I mean, I think a lot of it goes to maybe scale, but there's even apps with huge volume applications. I don't know, you kind of stumped me. I can't think of a good use case as of recently. Back in the day, I could think of some, but a lot of the things have been squashed with some of the new releases and features now. If I think of something, I'll come back with you. But
Well, how about this for an example? Can you create a web API that does some custom data conversion or custom data calls on the back end?
yeah, I mean, basically any of that kind of stuff is going to be through the connector model. And then if you have a connector to it, so if it's like a little function that you call, if it's an API that you a service that you have, like if you can build that, you can call it in Power Apps via a connector. So yeah, you're not going to be able to like host that in Power Apps itself. Power Apps is just the front end, right? But if you have a connector, you can go and do like advanced logic and return it in your application in Power Apps.
Okay, so I can't create the API in my Power Apps per se, but I can use that to
Right.
interface with that API.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you can access the API, you can have the full power of whatever's going on code-wise, in your back end there with that and use that inside of Power Apps.
Okay. And one last question for me is, what do you see on the horizon for Power Apps?
Yeah, I think just more integrations in the traditional code stack. I mean, that's been a big focus. I think is making it easier for devs to be able to integrate with that. This we've seen a lot of tooling wise. Of course, AI. I mean, that's the amount of innovation, as I said, in the last few months has been crazy. So I think we'll continue to see more innovations there as far as just co-pilots and generative AI functionalities being spread out more across the Power Platform, even more, I suspect, and then probably just more innovation and just making it as easy as possible to build apps and design them and all of that. So I think AI and more integrations. If I were to summarize that into two bullets.
Okay, very good. Well, thanks for answering all of our questions. Appreciate it. I just wanted to throw it out one more time. Does anyone have any last questions or comments for April?
Thank you very much. This was really informative, and I see it being huge in the future.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad you all found it helpful. So
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely very informative, and looking forward to going through that PowerPoint again and trying things out for myself, personally speaking. So, thank you very much, April. If you don't mind, I'd like to take back the presentation mode. Just have a couple wrap-up slides.
absolutely.
My laptop's a little bit slow in the evening, so let's go ahead and share my screen. All right, so thanks again to April for joining us from Tulsa. Great presentation on Power Apps. In the chat window, you'll see that there are a few links that are posted, and we'll go through those in just a second. As far as the resources that are available, the recording of the presentation will be edited and uploaded in a couple days. Please subscribe to the channel for upload notifications, and that link is in the chat window, as well as the tech events that we'll cover in just a little bit. And last but not least, the feedback eval form. So all three links are currently in the chat window. If you would please take a moment to bookmark those, as well as subscribe to the channels and the blog. In addition, the feedback eval so that we can raffle off the prizes and be able to give April some constructive criticism. If you joined us after the start of the meeting, we have a special offer from Manning.com for a selection of books with a 35% off discount. The link for that is also posted in chat, along with the discount code. Some of the events that are going to be happening in the area. August 1st is a cookout for data professionals. That is an in-person event, obviously, and that will be held by the Ohio North Database Training Group, and the link will be posted on my blog. On August 2nd is the Akron Women in Tech, and yours truly will be presenting there on an introduction to AI for developers. And then on August 3rd is the Great Lakes Users Group for .NET, also known as GlugNet. They're going to be meeting on an off-band meeting on August 3rd. And then the fourth Thursday of August, August 24th, will be the Cleveland C# VB.NET, aka this group. And we're going to have a gentleman presenting on how to integrate .NET code into a microchip. So that is very interesting stuff. Definitely encourage you to register for that. All these links will be posted on my blog shortly. And as far as job openings, Tech Systems always has jobs available at techsystems.com/IT-jobs, but always like to ask who's hiring and who's looking for work. So if you would please make yourself known either in chat or verbally. Anyone have any open positions or looking to jump ship? All right, everyone has gainful employment, so that's a good thing. Very good. Should you have something handy that pops up later, feel free to reach out to me, snasser@nistechnologies.com. You can also find me on Twitter and my blog once again. Lastly, if we're not connected on LinkedIn, I invite you to do so. And so with that, thanks to April again for our presentation, and thank you for all of you who attended, and look forward to seeing you all next month. Thank you, everyone, and good night.